Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. Sectarian violence in Egypt is nothing new. This latest wave, is it a cause for concern?
Absolutely. I think that it comes from a number of different strands. Firstly, the Coptic community, it's an Orthodox Christian community. They've always been a part of Egypt's history. They have in fact been there longer than what the Muslims have been a part of Egypt. Form a significant part of the population, about 15 to 20% of the population, and the Orthodox, the Coptic Pope occupies a position of considerable prestige inside Egyptian society. When the coup took place and the leaders of the coup appeared on TV, they actually engaged in quite a sophisticated political move. They brought along the nominal leader of the Muslim community, the Sheikh of the Al-Azhar institution, along with the Coptic Pope, had them parading with General Adli in order to give justification to the coup. Now, one would then say, so it's not just the Christians who gave justification to the coup, it was also the Muslims. The problem is that Al-Azhar is a formal, official institution and doesn't really have the support of the Muslims or the Islamist masses on the street. The masses on the street the Muslim masses on the street have really been supporting the Muslim Brotherhood. There's also been, throughout Egypt's history, a long tradition of Muslim-Christian tensions that have at various stages been managed by a more secular state. With the coming to power of the more pronounced Islamist tendency in the shape of the Brotherhood, that anti-Muslim, that intolerance also came to the surface. Now, one must say that in the very beginning, while Morsi was standing for elections, and in the beginning of his administration, he made numerous promises to in fact bring women on board and to bring the Christian Copts on board. Once he was in power, however, the pressures that he had to face from his traditional crowd and the more conservative crowd, that gave him much limited space for maneuverability, with the result that no Christians occupied a significant position inside the government, opening the door for the sense amongst Christians that they are now being marginalized.
And now, with the instability that we're seeing at the moment politically, there has been some sort of a transition, but there's an air of tension that still lingers. What needs to happen right now to curb sectarian violence?
Well, I mean, at the moment, the one problem is that the Brotherhood, and it is Brotherhood supporters that are largely responsible for the anti-Christian violence. I think that it's important to not describe it as sectarian violence. This could give the impression that there are simply two sides fighting it out, where the reality is that it is Christians that are on the receiving end of Muslim violence. We need to be clear about naming this. The one problem is that the Muslim Brotherhood, their supporters primarily responsible for the anti-Christian violence, that they are involved in a much bigger battle with the state that has now clamped down upon them in an absolutely vicious way, is threatening their finances. Their leaders are imprisoned without trial. The army has moved in against them. Scores of them have been killed on the streets in peaceful demonstrations. So in the middle of this, to ask such a group, can you please pay attention to another minority that you are treating in exactly the same way as what an oppressive military that has taken over the state is treating you? That's just socially a very difficult task to do, because the Brotherhood at the moment sees itself engaged in a titanic battle for survival with the state. And in this battle, unfortunately, like that African expression that we have, when the elephants fight, it is the grass that gets trampled underneath.
Now, very briefly, going forward, do you think there's political will and maybe social will to bring about change and have Muslims and Christians live together in unity in Egypt? Or do you foresee that you and I will have a similar conversation a year from now?
Amongst the leadership of both the Brotherhood, of Tamarrud, the opposition forces inside Egypt, or now the ruling forces inside Egypt, and the Christian leadership, there's always been a very strong commitment to dialogue and conversation. And people are genuinely committed to it. The problem is that the rhetoric of pluralism, interfaith dialogue, coexistence, neighborliness, that very little is being done by the leadership of these groups to translate that rhetoric into messages for ordinary congregations who attend mosques and churches on Saturdays, on Fridays and Sundays respectively.
We'll have to leave it there for now. And there you have it. That was Professor Farid Esack from the University of Johannesburg.
News that moves. eNCA.com.